How would you feel if a court officer appeared at your door the day after your child's birthday party, with a thick envelope addressed to your husband? Why did my husband ask for a DNA test after seeing my ex at the party, and what did he do when the results arrived? This is how my life unraveled after one innocent lie. The backyard looked perfect. Pink and purple streamers hung from the oak tree, matching balloons bobbed in the gentle breeze, and the Princess Castle bounce house domi Robert the lawn. I had spent weeks planning Isabel's 5th birthday party, determined to show everyone what a wonderful mother and wife I was. "Mommy, when will Uncle Owen get here?" Isabel asked, tugging on my sundress as I arranged the gift table. "Soon, sweetheart," I replied, smoothing her dark curls. "Remember, he's bringing you that special surprise we talked about." I glanced toward the kitchen window where my husband Robert was setting up the sound system. At 35, he still had that quiet, methodical way about him that had attracted me years ago. But lately, his IT consultant precision felt more like suffocating control than comforting stability. The first guests arrived at 2 o'clock sharp, my sister Sam with her kids, followed by Robert's mother, Linda, carrying an elaborately wrapped present. Linda Harper was the type of woman who ironed her jeans and had opinions about everything. At 60, she maintained the same disapproving expression she'd worn since I'd married her precious son. "Eirene, dear," Linda said, air-kissing my cheek. "Such a lovely party. Though I hope you haven't invited too many people. Children can get overwhelmed." "Just family and close friends," I assured her, though my stomach tightened. Owen wasn't exactly family, and calling him a close friend felt complicated. More guests filtered in. Co-workers from the insurance office where I worked as an underwriter, neighbors, Isabel's preschool friends with their parents. The backyard filled with laughter and conversation, exactly the atmosphere I'd envisioned. Then Owen arrived. At 34, Owen Sutter had only gotten better looking since our college days. His gym ownership showed in his broad shoulders and confident stride. He wore a fitted polo that highlighted his tan, and his smile could still make my pulse quicken. "There's the birthday girl," Owen called out, scooping Isabel into a bear hug that made her giggle. "Uncle Owen brought you something very special." I felt eyes on me and turned to see Robert standing by the patio door, his expression unreadable. He walked over slowly, his jaw tight. "Owen," Robert said coolly, extending his hand, "I wasn't expecting you." "Eirene invited me," Owen replied, his handshake lingering a beat too long. "Couldn't miss Princess Isabel's big day, could I?" "Of course not," Robert said, but I caught the edge in his voice. I quickly stepped between them. "Owen, let me get you a drink." "Robert, could you help me in the kitchen?" But Robert was already walking away, his shoulders rigid with tension I recognized all too well. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. Robert making a scene and ruining Isabel's perfect day. The party continued, but I felt Robert's eyes tracking my every interaction with Owen. When Owen complimented my dress, when he helped me carry the cake, when he pushed Isabel on the swing set, each moment felt scrutinized and judged. "Renee, you've really outdone yourself," Owen said during a quiet moment as we watched Isabel play with her new toys. "Remember her first birthday? That tiny apartment with the leaky ceiling?" I laughed, the memory warming me. "You brought her that stuffed elephant. She carried it everywhere for months." "Still got it," Owen said softly, "in a box with all our old photos." The intimacy in his voice made me glance around nervously. Linda was watching us from across the yard, her lips pressed into a thin line. Sam caught my eye and gave me a supportive smile, but I could see the concern there too. As the afternoon wore on, the tension became harder to ignore. Robert barely spoke to anyone, moving through the party like a ghost at his own daughter's celebration. When it came time to sing happy birthday, he stood apart from the group, his smile forced and painful to watch. "What's wrong with Daddy?" Isabel whispered to me as we cut the cake. "Nothing, baby," I said, shooting Robert a pointed look. Daddy's just tired from work. But I could see the damage was done. Several guests had noticed the atmosphere, exchanging glances and whispering among themselves. This was supposed to be our moment to shine as a family, and Robert was sabotaging it with his jealousy and paranoia. As guests began leaving, Owen lingered to help clean up. I was grateful for the assistance, especially since Robert had disappeared into the house without explanation. I should probably go, Owen said eventually, loading paper plates into a trash bag. Don't want to cause any more tension. You're not causing anything, I said firmly. Robert's just being... Robert, overthinking everything. Owen stepped closer, his voice dropping. If you ever need anything, Renee, you know I'm here, right? For you and Isabel. The way he said my name, that old nickname that only he used, sent a familiar shiver through me. I know, I whispered back. From the kitchen window, I saw Robert watching us, his face dark with suspicion. Let him watch, I thought defiantly. I wasn't doing anything wrong. After Owen left, I found Robert in our bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. Well, I hope you're happy, I said, crossing my arms. You completely ruined Isabel's party with your attitude. Robert looked up at me, and I was startled by the pain in his eyes. Why was he here, Eirene? Because I invited him, because he cares about Isabel, because not everything in this world revolves around your insecurities. My insecurities? Robert stood slowly. He called you Renee. Nobody calls you that except my friend from college who's known me for over a decade, I interrupted. God, Robert, do you hear yourself? You're being paranoid and controlling, and frankly, it's embarrassing. I'm not trying to control you. I'm trying to understand why my wife invited her ex-boyfriend to our daughter's birthday party without mentioning it to me. Because I knew you'd react exactly like this. I threw my hands up in exasperation. I knew you'd make it weird and uncomfortable for everyone. And I was right, wasn't I? Robert stared at me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. You're right, he said quietly. I did make it weird. I'm sorry. His sudden capitulation caught me off guard. I'd expected more arguing, more accusations. Oh, well, good, I'm glad you can admit it. I'll try to be more understanding, Robert continued, his voice strangely calm. About your friendships. Something in his tone made me uneasy, but I pushed the feeling aside. I'd won this round, and that was what mattered. Robert would get over his jealousy and life would return to normal. As I got ready for bed that night, I replayed the day's events. Despite Robert's mood, the party had been a success. Isabel was happy, the guests had complimented my planning, and Owen had reminded me of who I used to be before I became just another suburban wife and mother. I fell asleep thinking about college, about the girl I'd been when the future seemed full of infinite possibilities. I didn't notice Robert lying awake beside me, staring at the ceiling until dawn. Monday morning at Hartwell Insurance felt like a refuge after the weekend's drama. I settled into my cubicle with my coffee, grateful for the familiar routine of policy reviews and claim assessments. The work was predictable, unlike my home life lately. How was the birthday party? Asked Jessica Martinez, my closest work friend, peering over the cubicle wall. At 28, Jessica was still single and lived vicariously through my family stories. It was perfect, I said, then caught myself. Well, mostly perfect. Robert was in one of his moods. Uh-oh, what happened? I glanced around the office, making sure our supervisor wasn't within earshot. He got weird because I invited an old friend, started acting all jealous and suspicious, like I was doing something wrong. Jessica raised an eyebrow. An old friend? Owen, my ex from college, but he's basically family now. Isabel adores him, and he's always been there for us. Robert just can't handle that I have a life outside of him. That does sound controlling, Jessica agreed, though I caught a flicker of something in her expression. How long have you and this Owen been friends? Since college. We dated for 3 years, but that was over a decade ago. We're mature adults who can maintain a friendship. Robert's just insecure because Owen's successful and confident and everything Robert isn't. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. It felt good to voice what I'd been thinking for months, that my husband's steady, quiet nature had become boring compared to Owen's dynamic energy. Wow, Jessica said slowly. That's a lot to unpack. I know it sounds harsh, but you don't live with him. Robert questions everything I do, everywhere I go. He's turned into this suspicious, paranoid person, and I'm tired of walking on eggshells. By lunch, I'd shared the story with 3 more co-workers. Each telling made Robert sound worse, and my position more reasonable. I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just maintaining a friendship that predated my marriage. If Robert couldn't handle that, it said more about his character than mine. Men can be so territorial, agreed Sarah from accounting as we sat in the break room. My ex used to get jealous if I even mentioned male co-workers. Exactly, I said, feeling validated. It's like they think they own us or something. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam. How are things with Robert after yesterday? Want to grab drinks tonight? You need sister time. I smiled, typing back, yes, please. Need to vent about his behavior. Everything okay? Jessica asked, noticing my expression. Just my sister being supportive. She saw how Robert acted at the party. Even she thinks he's becoming controlling. Well, you know your marriage better than anyone, Jessica said carefully. But maybe there's a reason he's feeling insecure. I looked at her sharply. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I just meant sometimes when people act jealous, it's because they're picking up on something, even if they can't articulate what it is. There's nothing to pick up on, I said firmly. Owen and I are friends. Period. If Robert can't trust me after 7 years of marriage, that's his problem, not mine. Jessica nodded, but I could tell she wasn't entirely convinced. It frustrated me that even my closest work friend seemed to be taking Robert's side, at least partially. The afternoon dragged on, punctuated by more conversations about my situation. I found myself embellishing details, making Robert's behavior sound more unreasonable, his accusations more baseless. Each retelling reinforced my position as the wronged party. Around 4 o'clock, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Owen. Great seeing you yesterday. Isabel looks so happy. Coffee sometime this week. Would love to catch up properly. I stared at the message, my heart rate picking up slightly. There was nothing inappropriate about coffee with an old friend. Robert might see it differently, but Robert saw threats everywhere lately. I glanced around the office, then quickly typed back, would love to. How about Thursday afternoon? Perfect. The usual place? 3 p.m.? The usual place. We'd met for coffee exactly twice in the past 6 months, but somehow Owen's phrasing made it sound like a regular occurrence. I deleted the message thread and slipped my phone back into my purse. Hot date? Jessica teased, having noticed my focused attention on the phone. Just making plans with my sister, I lied smoothly. She's taking me out to cheer me up after Robert's drama. The rest of the workday passed uneventfully, but I found myself distracted, thinking about Thursday's coffee date. It wasn't a date, of course, just 2 old friends catching up. But the anticipation felt different from planning sister time or lunch with co-workers. As I drove home, I rehearsed how I'd handle the evening with Robert. I wouldn't mention Owen's text or our coffee plans. There was no point in creating more drama over something so innocent. Robert's jealousy was already out of control. Adding fuel to the fire would only make things worse for everyone. I pulled into our driveway at 5:30, noting that Robert's car was already there. He usually worked until 6, but maybe he'd left early to spend time with Isabel. Or maybe he was still sulking about yesterday. Inside, I found them in the living room, Isabel building an elaborate castle with her blocks, while Robert sat nearby, ostensibly reading but clearly watching the door for my arrival. "Mommy!" Isabel launched herself at me, and I scooped her up, breathing in her sweet scent. "Hi, baby. How was your day?" Daddy picked me up early from school. We got ice cream and went to the park. I looked at Robert over Isabel's head. Early pickup. Thought we could all spend some family time together, he said evenly. How was work? Fine. The usual Monday chaos. I set Isabel down and headed for the kitchen. I'm going out with Sam tonight, by the way. Sister bonding time. Of course you are, Robert said quietly, but I pretended not to hear the resignation in his voice. During dinner, Robert made an effort to be normal, asking about my day, laughing at Isabel's stories, complimenting the pasta I'd thrown together, but I could feel the undercurrent of tension, the careful way he chose his words. Uncle Owen said he might take me to see the new princess movie, Isabel announced between bites of garlic bread. I nearly choked on my wine. When did he say that, sweetheart? Yesterday at my party. He said we could go next weekend if Mommy and Daddy said okay. I felt Robert's eyes on me but kept my expression neutral. We'll see, baby. Weekends are family time. But Uncle Owen is family, Isabel protested. He said so. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Robert cleared his throat. Finish your dinner, princess. You've got bath time before bed. After Isabel was settled with her bedtime story, I got ready to meet Sam. I chose my outfit carefully, jeans and a cute top that made me feel confident and attractive, not because I was trying to impress anyone, but because I deserved to feel good about myself after the weekend's stress. Have fun, Robert said as I grabbed my purse. Don't stay out too late. I'm 33 years old, Robert. I think I can manage my own bedtime. He held up his hands in surrender. I just meant because you have work tomorrow. I wasn't trying to... I know what you meant, I said, softening my tone slightly. I'll be reasonable. We're just going to Rossetti's for a few drinks. Tell Sam I said hi. I will. But as I drove away, I realized I had no intention of mentioning Robert at all tonight. I needed space to process my feelings without his shadow hanging over every conversation. Sam would understand. She'd always been the sister who encouraged me to prioritize my own happiness. The evening stretched ahead of me, full of possibility and freedom. For a few hours, I could be just Eirene again, not Robert's wife or Isabel's mother or anyone's anything. Just me. It felt dangerously good. Thursday afternoon arrived with unseasonable warmth for early October. I'd told my supervisor I had a dental appointment and left work at 2:30, giving myself plenty of time to freshen up before meeting Owen. The coffee shop we'd chosen was across town from both my office and our neighborhood, neutral territory that felt safely anonymous. But as I sat in my car outside, I realized I was more nervous than I'd expected to be. This was ridiculous. Owen and I had been friends for years. We'd grabbed coffee before, always in public, always innocent. So why did this feel different? My phone buzzed. Running 10 minutes late. Equipment delivery at the gym. Sorry. I smiled despite my nerves. Owen's gym had been struggling when he first bought it 3 years ago, but his combination of business savvy and genuine care for his clients had turned it around. He was proud of what he'd built, and rightfully so. No problem. I'll order for both of us. You remember my order after all these years? Large coffee, black, extra shot. Some things never change. More things than you might think. See you soon, Renee. There it was again, that nickname that belonged to a different version of me. College Renee had been confident, adventurous, unafraid of taking risks. Somewhere along the way, she'd been replaced by Eirene, the insurance underwriter, Eirene, the responsible wife and mother. I ordered our drinks and found a corner table, checking my reflection in my phone camera. I'd chosen a blue sweater that brought out my eyes and left my hair down instead of in my usual work ponytail. Not because I was trying to impress Owen, but because I wanted to feel like myself again. There's my girl, Owen said, sliding into the seat across from me. Even slightly out of breath from rushing, he looked amazing. His gym clothes, athletic shorts and a fitted t-shirt, showed off the physique that had made him popular in college, and apparently still turned heads now. Your girl? I laughed, though my cheeks warmed. I think my husband might disagree with that designation. Owen's expression grew serious. How is Robert? He seemed tense at the party. I sighed, wrapping my hands around my coffee cup. He's been like that for months, ever since I mentioned that we'd been talking again. He's convinced there's something inappropriate going on. And is there? The directness of the question caught me off guard. What do you mean? Owen leaned forward slightly. I mean, are we doing anything wrong by being here? By staying in touch? Of course not. We're friends. We have history, but that doesn't mean... Doesn't mean what? I stared at him, suddenly aware of how intimate this felt. The corner table, the way he was looking at me, the flutter in my stomach that had nothing to do with caffeine. It doesn't mean anything inappropriate, I finished weakly. Owen sat back, studying my face. You know, I've thought about you a lot over the years. Wondered what would have happened if we hadn't broken up senior year. Owen, I know. You're married. You have Isabel. But seeing you at the party, watching you with her, you looked so natural, so happy. But then I'd catch you looking at Robert, and there was this sadness in your eyes. I'm not sad, I protested, but even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. Aren't you? When's the last time he made you laugh the way you used to? When's the last time you felt excited about coming home to him? The questions hit too close to home. When was the last time? I couldn't remember Robert making me feel the way Owen had at the party, seen, appreciated, desired. Marriage isn't about constant excitement, I said, falling back on the safe response. It's about partnership, stability, building a life together. But what about passion? What about feeling alive? I feel alive, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Owen reached across the table and touched my hand gently. Do you, though? Because the Renee I knew in college was full of fire. She took chances, followed her heart, lived boldly. This version of you seems diminished. His touch sent electricity through me, and I didn't pull away immediately. People grow up, Owen. They get responsibilities. They don't have to lose themselves in the process. We sat in silence for a moment, his hand still covering mine. I knew I should move away, should change the subject, should remember that I was a married woman having coffee with an old friend. But the warmth of his skin, the intensity in his eyes, the way he saw me, really saw me, made it hard to think clearly. I should go, I said finally, but I didn't move. Should you? Or do you think you should because that's what you're supposed to do? What's the difference? The difference is whether you're living your life or just going through the motions. I pulled my hand back, the spell broken by the harsh truth in his words. I have a good life, Owen. A husband who loves me, a beautiful daughter, a stable job. I can't just throw that away because I'm feeling nostalgic. I'm not asking you to throw anything away. I'm just asking you to remember who you used to be, who you could be again. And what would that look like exactly? Owen smiled, and for a moment he looked exactly like the 21-year-old who had stolen my heart in Professor Morrison's economics class. It would look like you being happy, really, genuinely happy. We talked for another hour, carefully steering away from dangerous territory, but never quite finding safe ground. Owen told me about the gym, about his plans to open a second location. I found myself sharing frustrations about work, about feeling invisible in my own life. You were never invisible to me, he said as we prepared to leave. You never could be. Outside the coffee shop, we stood awkwardly by our cars, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the parking lot. This was nice, I said, fumbling for my keys. We should do this again sometime. I'd like that. Maybe next week. Maybe. Owen stepped closer, and for a terrifying moment I thought he might try to kiss me. Instead, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my cheek. Take care of yourself, Renee. You deserve to be happy. I drove home in a daze, Owen's words echoing in my mind. The rational part of me knew I was playing with fire. that coffee dates and meaningful conversations were a slippery slope, but the part of me that had been dormant for years was awakening, stretching, remembering what it felt like to be desired. My phone rang as I pulled into the driveway. Robert's name appeared on the screen, and guilt crashed over me like a cold wave. "Hi," I answered, trying to sound normal. "Hey, how was the dentist?" The lie came so easily, it scared me. "Fine, just a cleaning. I'm home now." "Good. Isabel's been asking for you. She wants to show you the picture she drew at school." "I'll be right in." I sat in the car for another moment, staring at our house, the house where Robert and I had planned to grow old together, where we'd brought Isabel home from the hospital, where we'd built what I'd thought was a happy life. But as I walked up the front steps, I couldn't shake Owen's question. When was the last time I'd felt excited about coming home? The answer, I realized with a sinking heart, was that I couldn't remember. I spent the next week in a strange state of suspension, going through my normal routines while replaying every moment of my coffee date with Owen. His words had planted seeds of discontent that grew stronger each day, making my interactions with Robert feel forced and hollow. "You seem distracted lately," Robert observed on Friday evening as we cleaned up after dinner. "Everything okay?" "Just work stuff," I replied, scrubbing a plate with unnecessary vigor. "Henderson's been pushing for faster turnaround times on the commercial policies." It was partially true. My supervisor had been more demanding lately. But the real reason for my distraction was the text I'd received from Owen that afternoon. "Can't stop thinking about our conversation. You deserve so much more than settling, Renee." I'd read it a dozen times before deleting it, but the words had burned themselves into my memory. "Maybe we should plan something fun for the weekend," Robert suggested. "Take Isabel to the zoo, or that new indoor playground she's been talking about." "Sure," I said automatically, though the thought of forced family fun made me feel claustrophobic. "Or we could have people over. It's been a while since we entertained." I looked at him sharply. "What kind of people?" "I don't know. My mom, your dad and Sam. Maybe some of the neighbors. Nothing fancy, just a casual dinner." The idea of Linda scrutinizing my every move while I pretended everything was perfect sounded like torture, but refusing would only raise more questions. "Fine," I agreed, "but you're helping with the cooking." Robert smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in weeks. "Deal, I'll make my famous lasagna." As we planned the menu and guest list, I felt a familiar pang of guilt. Robert was trying so hard to connect with me, to fix whatever he sensed was wrong between us. If I were a better wife, I'd appreciate his efforts instead of resenting them. But I wasn't feeling like a better wife lately. I was feeling like a woman who'd lost herself somewhere along the way and was just beginning to remember who she used to be. Saturday evening arrived grey and drizzly, matching my mood as I prepared for our dinner party. I'd spent the afternoon cleaning and decorating, trying to create the illusion of domestic bliss. Robert had been in the kitchen since noon, carefully layering his lasagna and preparing garlic bread with the precision he brought to everything. "You look beautiful," he said, as I came downstairs in a navy dress and heels. "That color is perfect on you." "Thank you," I replied, accepting his kiss on the cheek while feeling like a fraud. The first guests arrived at 6, my father Paul and my sister Sam, followed shortly by Linda, bearing a bottle of wine and her usual air of judgment. "Eirene, dear," Linda said, embracing me stiffly. "You look tired. Are you getting enough sleep?" "I'm fine, Linda. Just busy with work." Her grey eyes studied me with uncomfortable intensity. "You know, Martha Henderson mentioned seeing you at that coffee shop across town last week. The one near the gym district. Odd place for a dental appointment." My blood went cold. Martha Henderson was one of Linda's bridge partners, and apparently had excellent eyesight and a big mouth. "I had some errands to run afterward," I said carefully. "You know how it is." "Do I?" Linda's tone was pleasant, but there was steel underneath. "I wouldn't know about running errands in that part of town," Nothing there that interests me. Sam appeared at my elbow, sensing tension. Linda, you look lovely tonight. Is that a new blouse? As Linda turned to accept the compliment, Sam shot me a questioning look. I shook my head slightly, not trusting myself to speak. Dinner started pleasantly enough. Robert's lasagna was perfect, the conversation flowed easily, and Isabel charmed everyone with her chatter about kindergarten and her latest art projects. Uncle Owen taught me how to make paper airplanes, she announced, folding her napkin into a rough triangle. He said he used to make them in college with Mommy. The table went quiet. I felt everyone's eyes on me, but Linda's gaze was particularly sharp. Uncle Owen again, Linda said mildly. He certainly seems to be spending a lot of time with our family lately. He's an old friend, I said, my voice tighter than I intended. There's nothing wrong with maintaining friendships. Of course not, Linda agreed, though some friendships require more maintenance than others. What's that supposed to mean? Paul cleared his throat. Perhaps we could talk about something else. Isabel, tell Grandpa about your art class. But Linda wasn't finished. I just think it's interesting how some people from our past have a way of reappearing when we're feeling unsettled, almost like they can sense vulnerability. I'm not vulnerable, I snapped, and I resent the implication that I can't manage my own friendships. Nobody's questioning your judgment, dear. I'm just concerned about appearances. People talk, you know. Let them talk. I'm not doing anything wrong. Of course you're not, Linda said soothingly. I'm sure your coffee dates are perfectly innocent. The words hung in the air like a challenge. I felt Robert's eyes on me, saw the confusion and hurt flickering across his face. Coffee dates, he said quietly. I wanted to lie, to deflect, to change the subject. But Linda's smug expression made something inside me snap. Yes, coffee dates. Owen and I had coffee last week. We're adults, we're friends, and I don't need anyone's permission to have a conversation with someone I've known for over a decade. You didn't mention it, Robert said, his voice carefully neutral. Because I knew you'd react exactly like this. I knew you'd make it into something it's not, and create drama where none exists. I'm not creating drama. I'm just wondering why you felt the need to keep it secret. Because you've been acting paranoid and jealous for months. Because you can't handle the fact that I have a life outside of this house, outside of being your wife and Isabel's mother. The words poured out before I could stop them, fueled by weeks of resentment and guilt. You question everything I do, everywhere I go. You make me feel like I'm under surveillance in my own marriage. That's not fair, Robert said quietly. I've never tried to control you. Haven't you? The suspicious looks, the pointed questions, the way you analyze every conversation I have with Owen. You've made it clear that you don't trust me. Maybe because you're giving me reasons not to trust you. The accusation hit like a slap. Around the table, I could see our family members shifting uncomfortably. Isabel had stopped eating and was looking back and forth between us with wide, frightened eyes. How dare you, I whispered. I have been nothing but faithful to you. If you can't handle me having friendships, that says more about your insecurities than my behavior. Friendships don't usually require secrecy, Linda interjected coldly. This is none of your business, I turned on her. You've been looking for reasons to disapprove of me since the day I married your son. Well, congratulations. You finally found something to sink your teeth into. Eirene, Paul said sharply, that's enough. Is it? Because I'm tired of pretending everything is fine when it's not. I'm tired of walking on eggshells and apologizing for having feelings, and wanting something more than this suffocating routine we call a marriage. The silence that followed was deafening. Isabel started to cry, and Sam reached over to comfort her while shooting me a look of shock and disappointment. Robert stood slowly, his face pale. I think, he said carefully, we need to talk privately. Why? So you can interrogate me some more, so you can make me feel guilty for wanting to feel alive again. So I can understand what's happening to my wife. The pain in his voice cut through my anger, but I was too far gone to stop. What's happening is that I'm remembering who I used to be, before I became just another suburban housewife going through the motions. And who you used to be involved, Owen, I suppose. Maybe it did. Maybe I was happier then. Maybe I knew who I was instead of just playing a role. Robert stared at me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. I see. The quiet devastation in those two words finally penetrated my fury. I looked around the table, at my crying daughter, my shocked father, my worried sister, my stone-faced mother-in-law, my broken husband, and realized I'd destroyed everything in a matter of minutes. Robert, I think our guest should go home, he said quietly. We clearly have some things to discuss. As our family members gathered their things and made awkward goodbyes, I stood frozen in the dining room, surrounded by the wreckage of my perfect dinner party and my marriage. I'd wanted to feel alive again. Mission accomplished. The house felt like a tomb after everyone left. Sam had taken Isabel upstairs to get her ready for bed, giving Robert and me space to have the conversation that could no longer be avoided. I sat at the dining room table, still set with our good china and the remnants of what was supposed to be a pleasant family dinner. Robert moved methodically around the room, clearing plates and glasses with the same careful precision he brought to everything. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken accusations and admissions. You don't have to clean up now, I said finally, my voice hoarse from the earlier shouting. I need something to do with my hands, he replied without looking at me. I watched him stack plates, noting the slight tremor in his fingers. In 7 years of marriage, I'd never seen Robert lose his composure completely. Even now, in the aftermath of my public meltdown, he was holding himself together with visible effort. Robert, about what I said. Which part? He finally met my eyes. The part where you called our marriage suffocating? The part where you admitted to secret meetings with your ex-boyfriend? Or the part where you said you were happier before you married me? Each word hit like a physical blow. Hearing my outburst repeated back in Robert's calm, measured tone made it sound even worse than I remembered. I was angry. I said things I didn't mean. Did you? Because you sounded pretty certain to me. Sam appeared in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. Isabel's in bed. She has some questions about why Mommy and Daddy were yelling. Shame washed over me. In my fury, I'd traumatized my 5-year-old daughter in front of our entire family. I'll talk to her tomorrow, I said weakly. We'll both talk to her, Robert corrected. She's scared and confused, and she needs to know that whatever's happening between us, she's loved and safe. Sam gathered her purse and jacket. I'm going to go, but Eirene, call me tomorrow, okay? We need to talk. After Sam left, Robert and I faced each other across the dining room table, like adversaries preparing for battle. How long? He asked quietly. How long what? How long have you been unhappy? How long have you been talking to Owen? How long have you been lying to me? The questions I'd been dreading, laid out with devastating simplicity. I haven't been lying to you. Not really. Secret coffee dates aren't lying. I didn't tell you because I knew you'd overreact, like you're doing now. Robert leaned back in his chair, studying me with an expression I couldn't read. You know what's interesting? For months I've been telling myself I was being paranoid, that my suspicions about you and Owen were unfounded, unfair to you. They are unfounded. Are they? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my instincts were right. You are having an emotional affair with your ex-boyfriend. That's ridiculous. Owen and I are friends. Friends don't usually inspire the kind of passion you showed tonight when defending them. Friends don't make you feel the need to lie by omission. Friends don't make you question your marriage. I opened my mouth to argue, then closed it. Everything he was saying was true, even if I didn't want to admit it. What do you want from me, Robert? You want me to cut off all contact with someone I've known for over a decade. You want me to pretend I don't have feelings or needs or a life outside of this house. I want my wife back, he said simply. The woman I married, who loved me enough to build a life with me. Not this stranger who looks at me like I'm some kind of prison guard. The pain in his voice broke something inside me. I do love you. Do you? Because it doesn't feel like it. It feels like you're tolerating me while you figure out how to get back to your real life, the one with Owen in it. That's not, I started, then stopped. Was that what I was doing? Was I mentally preparing for a different future while going through the motions of my current life? Robert reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. He set it on the table between us with deliberate care. "What's that?" I asked, though something in his expression made my stomach drop. "A DNA test kit." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "I want a paternity test for Isabel." I stared at him in shock. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. Isabel is your daughter. How can you even question that?" "Because I've been questioning everything lately. Because you've admitted to lying to me, to secret meetings with your ex, to being happier before you married me. Because I need to know what's real and what's been a lie." "This is insane. Isabel looks like you. She has your eyes, your stubborn streak. She also has dark hair like Owen. She calls him Uncle Owen, like he's family. She talks about him constantly, knows things about his life that she could only know if he's been around a lot more than I realized." "You're being paranoid." "Am I?" "Because earlier tonight, you made it pretty clear that I don't know my own wife. Maybe I don't know everything about my daughter's paternity either." I felt like I was drowning. "Robert, please, don't do this. Don't let your jealousy destroy our family." "I'm not destroying anything. I'm trying to understand what I'm fighting for. If Isabel isn't mine, then this whole conversation takes on a different meaning." "She's yours. I swear to you, she's yours." "Then you won't have any problem with the test." I stared at the envelope, my mind racing. The truth was, I wasn't entirely certain about Isabel's paternity. Owen and I had hooked up a few times during a brief separation from Robert early in our relationship. I'd convinced myself that the timing made Robert the father, but there had always been a small doubt in the back of my mind. "This is going to traumatize her," I said desperately. "It's a simple cheek swab. She doesn't have to know what it's for." "And when the results come back showing she's yours, what then? Do you think you can just take this back? Do you think we can pretend this never happened?" "When the results come back, we'll deal with whatever they show, together or separately, depending on what you decide you want." The calm finality in his voice terrified me. This wasn't the emotional, jealous husband I'd been dealing with for months. This was someone who had made a decision and was prepared to follow through regardless of the consequences. "I need time to think about this," I said. "The appointment is scheduled for Monday morning at 10 a.m. The lab is downtown, near your office. You can think about it all you want, but this is happening." "You can't make me." "Actually, I can. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Given the circumstances, I can petition the court for a paternity test if you refuse to cooperate voluntarily." I felt the walls closing in around me. "You've spoken to a lawyer?" "I've spoken to several lawyers. I wanted to understand my options." "What options?" Robert stood up, the envelope still sitting between us like an accusation. "That depends on what the test shows and what you decide you want for our future. I want us to work this out. I want our family to stay together." "Do you? Because everything you've said and done lately suggests otherwise." I reached for him, but he stepped back, maintaining distance between us. "I made mistakes," I said desperately. "I was confused and angry, and I said things I shouldn't have said. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can work through our problems. We can, after the paternity test, after we know what we're really dealing with. And if I refuse, then I'll know everything I need to know about where your loyalties lie." He headed for the door, then paused. "The appointment is at Genetics Plus on 5th Street, 10 a.m. Monday. Don't be late." I sat alone in the dining room, staring at the envelope that contained the potential destruction of everything I'd built. Outside, rain began pattering against the windows, matching the tears I finally allowed myself to cry. I'd wanted to feel alive again. Instead, I'd never felt more afraid. Monday morning arrived cold and grey at Genetics Plus. The process was simple: cheek swabs, paperwork, waiting. Results in 5 to 7 business days. The week crawled by in surreal agony. Wednesday, Isabel asked, "Are you and Daddy getting divorced?" Thursday, Owen appeared at my office, kissed me. I pushed him away. Friday, the call came, results ready. At the lawyer's office, the verdict was final. Robert wasn't Isabel's biological father. "Our entire marriage was built on deception," he said quietly. He filed for divorce, sought primary custody. 3 months later, I lost everything in court: my husband, my daughter,